Hi everyone. In this video, let's look at WPA security specifically in the enterprise environment. Now, this is an overview video just to basically cover the basics, and basically upcoming kind of videos we'll look at frame level detail. So now in the security perspective, now you should be aware in Wi-Fi we have latest something called WPA3. So in that particular WPA3, we have a certain option for personal deployment, like your home environment, where you can deploy any of these methods like WPA3 only. Then the drawback is you cannot connect your legacy client. In that way, the Wi-Fi Alliance introduce in a transition mode where you can enable legacy security and newer security on the same SSID. But this is only possible in the legacy band, that is 2.45 gigahertz, not on 6 gigahertz band. Now, even with this, in the personal kind of scenario, they introduce another particular mode, what we call compatibility mode, just to address some legacy client, like a transition is very slow. In that way, in the personal deployment, you have a 3 mode of deployment. In the enterprise security, again, we had WPA3 enterprise only. But like in here, they introduce another mode called 192-bit mode, where you have a very sensitive environment like government, defense, those kind of environment. You can implement 192-bit security across authentication, key integrity, and encryption. So in that way, there is a specific mode called 192-bit mode available. Now, even here, all this particular method, you can only connect WPA3 client, but you cannot connect your legacy client. So if you want to bring your legacy client support, then you have to enable that mode called transition mode. Again, remember this mode is only available in 2.5 gigahertz, not 6 gigahertz. 6 gigahertz, it has to be WPA3 only. Even Wi-Fi 7, it has to be WPA3 only. You cannot bring legacy security into latest technologies. Now, for your guest kind of network, they had something called OpenSSID for a very long period of time. Then Wi-Fi Alliance introduced a security program called Enhanced Open, that is in 2018, to secure your guest SSIDs, simply providing encryption without any authentication. Now, if you want on your legacy band, your legacy client to be connected to same SSID, then there's a mode called transition mode. But again, this is not very well adapted. It requires 2 SSIDs. In that way, going forward in Wi-Fi 7, there are no transition mode kind of setup. It has to be just enhanced or open only. So now all of this particular method providing high level protected management frame support, PFS, perfect forward secrecy, that will pretty much mitigating denial of service attack. That's why you should go for some form of WPA3. Now, in this particular video, we are focusing on the enterprise security. Let's look at what are the different options available in the enterprise security. Now, if you look at the AKM, this is sort of a reference table I have given here, directly coming from the IEEE standard. So now for very long period of time, if you enable .1x on your SSID, they advertising an AKM value called AKM value number 1. So now drawback of this is basically this is using SHA-1 for the message integrity. In today's context, we're treating SHA-1 is not secure enough. In that way, now if you want to higher security, they have some other AKM value, what we call AKM value 3, which introduce .1x support with fast transition. That means 11R support. So if you want to add 11R support, you want to go with AKM value 3. So typically, when you configure SSID for .1 11R, they will advertising AKM3 on top of AKM1. So now if you want .1x without fast transition, but still need to be secure, so that's AKM value 5. That's what you need to use. So now all this particular, typically with the WPA2 world, we had this particular AKM value. In that way, like AKM-1, 3 and 5, but most of the legacy clients will connect to AKM-1, but newer clients, they understand AKM-5, they should be able to connect. Now, with the WPA3, the main enhancement was introduction of PMF. In that way, if you're implementing PMF with any of this AKM, that technically WPA3. Okay, in that way, like it's a subtle difference. Like in that way, if you enable AKM-5 with PMF enable, then technically it is WPA3 connection. In that way, now we talk about some other AKM value, but most common AKM when you enable WPA3 is AKM value 5. In that way, that's why I just put AKM-5 into WPA2 and WPA3 as well. It's a subtle difference how you implementing AKM-5. Okay. So now all of this particular value you can see in the table, they use CCMP 128. That means encryption keys 128 key length. Now we said basically in WPA3, they introduce another mode called 192-bit mode. In that way, just to highly sensitive environment, you have to go with that. So now for that, they introduce a different AKM value. AKM value number 12, which is basically 192-bit security across the sort of board, authentication, encryption, and integrity. Now AKM value 13 is there with fast transition support, but it is not being certified from Wi-Fi Alliance point of view. In that way, whenever you're implementing 192-bit mode, pretty much AKM value 12. Okay, so there are no fast transition kind of support there because AKM-13 has not been certified or tested from the client devices point of view. In that way, keep in mind these two options are available if you go with the 192-bit mode. But those are very small use cases where very sensitive environment, you want to go with highest level of security possible. But now with Wi-Fi 7, we talked about we would like to have a higher security. In that way, I'm sure like this AKM value 23 and 22 being added to the AKM table. But if you look at the sort of still same like fast transition with .1x, SHA-384. In that way, still encryption point of view, this will providing a 256-bit encryption. So the difference is going to be, I would assuming, like the 12 need the EPTLS sensitive environment, but 22 to 23 may be without that much of, like restriction. Probably normally they may be introducing for Wi-Fi 7 kind of connectivity. But as of today, implementation point of view, I haven't seen any vendor implemented 22 and 23 AKM value support. So I will basically go through some configuration in upcoming video, but AKM value 5, or if you want to go with 192-bit mode, AKM value 12. Those are the sort of most common AKM value vendors has been implemented. Now let's look at, like before just talking about that, there's one other AKM value 11, also supported .1x, but that is limited to GCMP 128-bit, but that is being deprecated. Okay, in that way, you should not use AKM value 11, but I just listed there because if you look at the table, that's also supporting .1x. But now let's look at implementation point of view, what are the different options available and what's happening with those deployment mode. So now in that way, if you're implementing WPA3 Enterprise, you have a couple of choices. One choice is just WPA3 Enterprise only. That means you have to advertise AKM value 5. Okay, so you're not advertising AKM value 1, the legacy AKM, only just AKM value 5. So which is typically supporting 128-bit encryption. But if you have a latest generation access point, ideally you should allow 256-bit encryption as well, like a Wi-Fi 7 connection. Again, if you need the 11R support on this. Probably then you have to advertise AKM-3 as well on top of AKM-5. Now in here, if you bring a Wi-Fi WPA3 client, they can connect. But if you bring a WPA2 client, you may not be able to connect to this SSID. Okay, so this is WPA3 only mode, but still this mode is like a rare, because you always have a legacy client, only WPA2. In that way, this is not implemented unless you have a control endpoint. Now we said in the enterprise only mode, there's another mode called 192-bit mode. In this 192-bit mode, this is deploying in a highly sensitive environment. In that way, we are only advertising the AKM value 12. Okay, so there are no other AKMs being allowed, only AKM value 12, and you have to use 256-bit encryption for your unique pairwise cipher, that's for unicast traffic, and group cipher for your broadcast traffic. In that way, in the management frame as well, you have to use a 256-bit kind of management cipher protecting management frame. So typically only with ETLS, this mode being supported. That means certificate-based authentication. Ideally, you can, that is targeted for sensitive environment, like a defense, industrial, government kind of environment. In a normal corporate, you will not deploy this mode. So again, this mode, only WPA3 client can connect, no WPA2 client can connect. So now, then this is what's practically possible, like in today's enterprise environment, if you want to bring WPA3, you have to bring in a form called transition mode. Okay. So in this particular mode, what's happening? Now you have to support your legacy client, which is AKM value 1. Okay. In that way, you need to bring AKM value 1 and AKM value 5 onto your SSID. But this is possible in your legacy band, 2.45 GHz band. Not 6 GHz band, because 6 GHz we are not allowing WPA2 security. Okay. In that way, AKM value 1 cannot be bring into the 6 GHz. So now your SSID need to be configured with PMF capable. You cannot mandate it. Your legacy client will connect without PMF. Your WPA3 client will connect with PMF. So there are no transition mode in 6 GHz. Only AKM value 5 will be advertised in the 6 GHz band. Mostly your client will be using 128-bit encryption. But if you want higher encryption, GCMP 256, you can allow that in your SSID. So now in this particular scenario, your WPA3 client will connect to AKM5. Your WPA2 client will go back to AKM value 1. So in that way, I hope, this is sort of a summary. When you're implementing WPA3 enterprise, you will see these 3 different options. But out of that, most likely practical scenario going to be this transition mode until you get rid of your legacy WPA2 client. So now let's look at another video, the configuration side of it, using, I have a Cisco Meraki and Cisco 9800. I will show some of these in basically in how to configure and then how to validate this configuration using a frame capture as well. So I hope this video will be useful to you just to understand summary of enterprise security. It's very important to understand what's happening with this security mode when it comes to WPA, WPA2 and WPA3. So until I see you in another video, keep studying and see you soon.